Sydney Schanberg, a New York Times journalist, is documenting the civil war in Cambodia in 1973. With the collaboration from local Cambodian journalist and interpreter Dip Pran, the two form a loyal bond and friendship that even the worst possible outcome cannot end. This is the Killing Fields, the name referring to the swamplands where the bodies of innocent citizens were left to rot and decompose if they were deemed enemies of the regime. This is a film that details how this duo, Sydney and Pran, and their journalistic efforts to cover the war built a loyalty that endured through a failed evacuation and genocide. Although the film narrative focuses on many tragic consequences of war, death, destruction, division, and the dictatorial rulership of Pol Pot, the central narrative is a very human and life-affirming tale. Roger Ebert, discussing the film's strengths, stated that the film is a masterful achievement on all the technical levels. It does an especially good job of convincing us with its Asian locations, but the best moments are the human ones, the conversations, the exchanges of trust, the waiting around, the sudden fear, the quick bursts of violence, the desperation. Although the film does achieve poignant and unsettling images through its spectacle, from a child crying covering their ears on a battlefield to Pran's eventual discovery of the killing fields, some of the most emotionally powerful scenes within the film are the quieter moments when Sydney and Pran are both expressing a sense of vulnerability. An earlier scene depicts Sydney offering the opportunity for Pran to evacuate from Cambodia to safety in America, but Pran is torn between evacuating or staying to fulfill his journalistic responsibility, while also staying with his closest American friend, Sydney. This impacts him so strongly he breaks into tears, and as the next sequence depicts the evacuation process, it is revealed to the audience that Pran decides to stay, loyal to his cause and to his journalist colleague, when his family are evacuated by helicopter from the American embassy, yet Pran remains behind with Sydney. The sequence is emotionally challenging to watch. Pran is so humanly affected by this difficult decision, and it is understandable why he found it emotional to decide. Either decision he made, to evacuate or remain, there is an element of remorse, yet the fact that he remains in Cambodia with Sydney illustrates early on the loyalty which circulates through and through Pran. Another example is when an attempted forged passport is made for Pran. The dictatorial regime demands that any Cambodian citizens are handed over. Photojournalist Al understands this means Pran could be killed. Therefore, a sequence unfolds that is mixed with anxiety and optimism. Sydney, photojournalist Al Rockoff, and their colleague John Swain rush to find the means to alter an expired passport and take Pran's photograph. They need camera film and a place they can use as a darkroom to develop the photograph. It's a close call, but they believe the attempt succeeds. With this passport, Pran can now leave Cambodia alongside his journalist colleagues and be reunited with his family. However, the attempt fails when the photograph fails to develop properly. Pran is forced to leave the embassy which previously protected him, but not before thanking gratefully those around him. When someone criticizes Sydney for not getting Pran out of Cambodia sooner, Pran tearfully defends Sydney, telling the critic that Sid is like a brother to him, and he understands Sid's heart. Even when Pran faces an uncertain future, one believed to end in a cruel death, he defends the man he feels closest to through this emotional act of loyalty. Sydney, as he returns to America swamped by the feeling of guilt, has reciprocated the loyalty to Pran. He has written hundreds of letters to organizations such as the Red Cross, attaching a photograph of Dip Pran, hoping that message will reach back to America about Pran's safety. In America, where Sydney is no longer tasked with documenting the unrest in Cambodia, what else can he do but wait? Despite the continental distance and growing uncertainty of Pran's fate, Sydney is loyal to his journalist partner and must still hold a glimmer of optimism for Pran's safety when all looks bleak. Roger Ebert, discussing the lack of traditional structure and referring to the film's later scenes, stated that one of the risks taken by the Killing Fields is to cut loose from that tradition, to tell us a story that does not have a traditional Hollywood structure, and to trust that we'll find the characters so interesting that we won't miss the cliche. It is a risk that works, and that helps make this into a really affecting experience. Many of the best scenes in the film's second half are essentially played without dialogue, as Pran works in the fields, disguises his origins, and waits for his chance. The film does avoid traditional film structure to an extent by dedicating its second half to Diff Pran and his experience as a forced labourer in Cambodia, as well as his escape. These are sequences that, for the most part, remain dialogue-free, or are accompanied by non-subtitled discussions and voiceovers dedicated to Sydney. These almost purely visual sequences deliver a level of tension that exceeds earlier sequences, as Pran's attempts at survival and escape are so closely thwarted by armed guards. His escape is slow, painful and disturbing. An attempt to escape with others ends in tragedy, as one escapee holding a child activates a landmine, causing their deaths, yet the escape is triumphant, as Pran reaches a Red Cross camp. As word reaches America, Sydney travels out to Cambodia as soon as possible to reunite with his friend. They embrace, happy and relieved to see each other again, something that must have seemed impossible. Sydney asks for Pran's forgiveness, but Pran suggests there is nothing to forgive in the first place. Despite Sydney's guilt for not getting Pran out of Cambodia sooner, and despite Pran's horrifying experience as a forced labourer, he has no resentment and does not consider anything to be Sydney's fault. The two are immensely happy that they have reunited. It's a powerful sentiment. Pran's confirmation allows Sydney to put his sense of guilt aside, and Pran reuniting with his friend allows a sense of relief that comes along with seeing an old friend you have missed for so long. This emotion the film depicts in its ending is incredibly human, and although not every viewer can literally say they have experienced such devastation as Pran, almost every viewer is likely to empathise with how powerful a reunion it is between these two. In conclusion, The Killing Fields, while it does depict the devastations of civil war, dictatorship and forced labour camps, at its heart is an incredibly human story which illustrates the truly enduring power of loyalty and friendship that, when all hope seems lost, the sense of loyalty and friendship manages to motivate people through their darkest times.